Hi, it's Mark calling from Milwaukee. Wanted to let you know my saga is over.
I'm an old-fashioned, independent, fundamental, premillennial, temperamental Baptist preacher. A real spiritual giant.
I'm a hard man to convince sometimes, even when it comes to doing wrong.
Nothing makes us so lonely as our secrets. I was on the brink of disaster. And those of you that were here for that, I confess my sin to you and ask for forgiveness. It was wrong and it was wicked.
Where in the world did this come from? Is this something the devil's throwing at me just to trip me up and destroy my ministry and destroy me? I did not choose this, and that's the very frustrating part.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you. They said you're deceived, and they want to put me through reparative therapy to beat it out of you.
Oh, so you're out?
Somebody even taller than I am.
Almost.
I'll tell you this much, I'm here. So I chose life.
My family member, they just want to say I miss you.
It hurt when he wanted to go through that change, and I didn't want that to become what I remember of my dad.
If Markie's not acceptable, how can I live my life in such a way to get rid of that? This is femininity. There she goes.
Man can run and run for year after year. All he realizes that he's running from himself.
By the grace of God, I am what I am.
Hey, Zach.
Hey, Adam. How are you?
All right, and you?
Oh, can't complain too much.
You sure?
I mean, I could, but I won't.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good. Are you in how far from you're upstate, right? But on yeah, how far from Narrowsburg are you?
I'm in Narrowsburg.
Oh, you're in your hometown?
Yes, I am.
Oh, are you okay? Are you in your home parents' place, or you have your own place up there too?
We hey Matt. Yeah.
What's up?
Good.
Just kind of establishing location, or I'm in the Columbia County, just barely upstate in the Hudson Valley.
Very
Exactly.
cool.
I know from Narrowsburg. I think when I was originally saw it up at Camden last summer, the first time I saw it, we'll get to your documentary in a sec, but Matt, hi. But when I first saw it, I had no idea you were involved in it. I was like, that guy looks very, very familiar. Zach, okay, I do know this guy.
Right.
What a surprise.
What a saga. It was it's always been this, very personal thing for me, obviously. And then, it was a great way to meet Martha. She's a fantastic filmmaker and the perfect person to tell the story. And, and so it was a really great experience to be on the other side of the camera of a documentary. It was fascinating.
I bet interestingly, I mean, this podcast was originally kind of like on the Rooftop Films website, it's like kind of like a partnership of sorts. And I remember going back in years, like how she and Martha and Dan Nuxel, who runs Rooftop Films, that they were partnering on this project. It changed quite a bit, because then it was all about Marie, and then it evolved into what became Narrowsburg. But what was nice was when I was at Camden that last summer of 2019, and I got to be at the premiere. Dan was there too. It was kind of nice. Everything had come full circle. I think I even donated to their probably $10. Kickstarter.
Same. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Matt. I'm sorry. I've been just
How's it going?
neglecting you. How are you?
Good.
Where are you?
I'm in Brooklyn in Ditmas Park.
Oh,
or
okay.
Midwood.
Yeah,
it's
very nice. How are things in Brooklyn?
All things considered, fine.
Yeah, sure. You're representing.
Going about our lives.
I mean, I guess a couple of years ago, we might have all been in Brooklyn doing this in person.
Yeah.
But,
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, we're here to talk about, Matt, your film. That this is your first feature documentary, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You directed, right?
Yep.
And which Zac is a producer.
Mm-hmm.
And our friend Larry Fessenden is an executive producer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right now, in 2 days from now, on Friday, is it the 20th?
Friday the 20th, yeah.
You're going to have a virtual theatrical with BAM. Right?
We're very excited, yeah.
Yeah, congratulations. How did you make that work? Because BAM, I'm sure there's only so many films they're gonna want to screen.
Yeah, we're distributed by Icarus Pictures, and they reached out to theaters, and we were debating. I guess late last year, early this year, we're like, do we do theatrical? Do we need to do theatrical? Is it something we want? Are people going to go to theaters?
Yeah,
and
right.
Lo and behold, the decision was kind of made for us about theater attendance, at least. So, but it's cool, and then Icarus reached out to New York theaters, and BAM was into it. So it's it feels like a very a great premiere.
Yeah, oh my goodness, we couldn't be more thrilled that it ended up at BAM. I mean, I think it exceeded our expectations completely, and it's just such a nice stamp of approval for the film. Obviously, it's like it's incredibly resonant story for us, and so it's been really nice to hear that it's been resonating for other people as well.
Yeah, congratulations. I mean, BAM is fantastic. I love BAM. Everybody loves BAM that knows BAM. So it's a great thing. And it has a lot of pedigree, which is a nice thing. And that's good too. Mm-hmm. So Matt, I don't know much about you. I do know that, you followed Mark, and again, remind me of his last name.
Wenzel, Wenzel. Mark and Markie.
Let me rephrase. Remind me of her last name. Because pronouns
better. Yeah, when we talk about the movie, we use female pronouns for the most part.
In this case, it's a particularly pertinent because it's always pertinent, but it's particularly pertinent because her self-identification is very unique in this case.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start setting it up, and you're going to interrupt and take over.
Sure.
You're the best advocate and ambassador for your film. But so this is a first of all, it takes place in Milwaukee, as the title would suggest. Mm-hmm. Markie in Milwaukee. It starts. Was it the 80s or 90s, roughly, when Mark, who was a family man,
mm-hmm.
he's unique also to that he's 7 feet tall.
Correct.
Has a family, is a fundamentalist Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Married, raising children, and finally, and he actually even preaches, correct?
Yeah. And was a professional preacher for 15-20 years, was like a traveling missionary. Went to Bob Jones University, evangelicals, Bob Jones, and then afterwards, they encouraged you to find a spouse, have kids, and become a preacher, and was doing that. And then,
how did you, before we continue setting up the film, which becomes, by the way, increasingly it doesn't stop getting more fascinating to the credits are rolling.
Yeah.
Right. The story, her story.
That was the goal. I mean, that was what happened. So we just
and why it took 10 years, as we know.
And kind of why it took, we could have wrapped it up sooner.
Right. And why Zac probably was producer, because he can empathize about a 10-year documentary. He's a subject in it better than anybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just say I want to ask, before we pick up the storyline, how and when, since this was 10 years ago, you came to know Markie.
Sure.
Since Markie's, you don't strike me as a Pentecostal Midwesterner.
I'm
at first glance.
No, I'm definitely not. I mean, my parents are Jews from the East Coast. And from Brooklyn and Queens. I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish household. So while Christianity is pretty foreign, categorically, hardline religion, very, more extreme religion was something I was familiar with. I had to learn a little bit of their Bible and how they talked, but definitely not a Christian.
So I know you made a few shorts before you made this film, but I'm going to guess that maybe one of the two of those projects were made during the time you were making Markie in Milwaukee. So I don't know that you met Markie as a filmmaker, or there was another path that led you to Markie.
I was right after I graduated film school. I went to film school with Zac, and I wanted a big, ambitious project. I just wanted to go and start making films, and it's very hard, of course. So I was looking, and I thought I wanted to do narratives. And then the story goes, I was visiting my folks in Milwaukee, and I saw Markie working at the airport. Wow. And I was she's a TSA agent. And that was, in the...
I have a question about that too, and I apologize because I keep interrupting. But what you mentioned, she was when she was still passing as a man, or identifying as a male outwardly, did she work as kind of doing her missionary work at the same time as working for the airport? Was that after the change?
Yeah. That's much in the past. So, Mark, how it was told to me, from a young age, Mark knew something was different. Mark was like, I think I'm a girl, would dress in his mom's clothes, would say these things to his parents, but of course, Catholic working class family in Wisconsin in the 70s, they're like, no, that's not a thing. You can't do that. So Mark was like, all right, I'm gonna hide this. I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm gonna be a jock. I'm gonna get into religion. I'm gonna go to Bob Jones University. And the family thought going to Bob Jones was too extreme. They were Catholic and they were happy with that. And then Mark was like, I want to be an evangelical minister. I need to preach to people that if you have these feelings, you keep them down. And it's in all the preaching tapes. Mark's always talking about, we got this sin inside and you got to keep it down, and was doing that to kind of support the decisions. Mark was leading the family, 3 kids, a wife, all over the South, preaching, traveling missionaries. You make money on, I guess they don't call it tips, but you pass the plate and you get money, and that's what you're living on. And the work dried up. It's hard to manage. It became untenable. So Mark moved the family back to Wisconsin and started getting random jobs, security jobs. I believe was at the airport pre 9/11. And then 9/11 became TSA. And, if you get a TSA job, it's great. You get a pension, it's a federal job. And then I think just there was depression. Suddenly this Markie thing came back, and there was no way to quiet it. So then at 40 or so, Markie started dressing, we used this photo booth, but Markie would, acquire clothes, drive 2 hours to some other mall, go to the photo booth, take a picture, and we see them in the movie looking at but that was happening concurrently with the family. And then there's a few stories about how the family found out. Mark came home one day and had a necklace on, like a kind of feminine necklace. And the wife was like, "Oh, what's that?" And it was like, "Oh, it's," and then one of the kids found some clothes. "What's up with these clothes?" So then when Mark was 46, I'm guessing 2005, the family left and Mark was like, "I'm going to be Markie full time now. And I'm going to," and the big steps were transitioning at work, which to their credit, the TSA was for the most part supportive of. And then it was maybe later that year that I met Markie. So I met Markie in the first year, maybe 18 months of being publicly Markie. And it's a process, and the height didn't help sell it, and the TSA uniform didn't help. Just being misgendered, everyone coming up to her, "Excuse me, sir, excuse me, sir." And then, 2008, it felt like Markie really hit a stride, and then, it was Markie full-time for about 5 years. So I met Markie earlier, and I think, again, she was always, she referred, when football teams replay like the thing, I never played football, but that was sort of Markie played football, but that was the idea. We would film little segments and she would see it and be like, "Oh, I do look feminine. People are calling me ma'am. I'm achieving what I want in this."
Right, on one level.
On one level. And,
like
it's temporary.
that had to be, right. It was helpful to her to be recognized as who she felt she was, right? A woman. On the other hand, she was also experiencing this ever continuing isolation.
It's this isolation, to me, she was like, "Oh, a filmmaker's interested. I'm going to be this happy, nice, optimistic person."
Right.
And just in the first year of filming, we do all this fun, kind of silly stuff. We go to the state fair. We go to, all the touristy spots in Milwaukee. We go to the art museum. It's just, we're having a bit of fun. And then it was, as time went on, then it was like, "By the way, I have this family. It's really hard being away from them. Yeah. Also, I have this very deep faith in God and church practice that I kind of need, that I'm being kept from." And that's maybe what's a little different, is even as Markie, the evangelical preaching was still kind of in her DNA.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And all of these things that, Markie felt were internal, and whenever she tried to externalize them, that's where the problems were, because, institutionally, I mean, you can have your faith, and if it's internal, that's what counts the most. But if you try to connect with, the institution, it may not, like in this case, it's church,
the community, yeah.
It's got to be very, very painful. So things started getting darker, but I can imagine for a while, as you said, when you're going to like the hanging out, that this was replace some of that loneliness and isolation that Markie was feeling when you and the film project was happening. That had to be a source of comfort and companionship to her for a while.
But like, we would film for a week, and then I would come back to New York for 2 or 3 months, and we'd talk once or twice. So, I couldn't do what the family does in any stretch, but
it was not going to sustain. It wasn't sustainable, but it was something. Yeah.
And, I was naive, and I was like, "Look, Markie's so happy. Markie's so encouraging." And it's true, but Markie was presenting that kind of, "It's a sunny day. Oh, well, as long as we," all these kind of positive coffee cup.
You saw through that. You saw the paint was pretty close to the surface, though.
I think I missed it initially, and then in reviewing that footage, the film sort of really started in 2013 with Coming Back to Mark, and then
you can bring her in, please, by all means. But we're fast and loose here, we love family members.
And it was only in reviewing footage after some time and being like, oh, this is pain, and I missed it at the time, or it's deeper than I initially realized.
Now, Zac, when did you come into the project? You said you went to school together. Where was that, by the way? Was it NYU or I can't remember?
It was, yeah,
NYU?
it was at NYU.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is okay. So, you were an editor. You started. That was your bread and butter. Anyway, so
yeah,
were you,
absolutely. And
right?
I worked with Matt in that capacity. I cut one of his early films, and so we had collaborated in the past. And I think when I was working on this, when Matt first reached out to me, I was just trying to help. I was just, sending him a release that he needed, and talking to him about strategy, about hunting down some of the other people in Markie's life that he was trying to get a hold of, and just kind of being a sounding board for him. And then as that went further and further, it became more formal in terms of me actually coming on board as a producer, and but the big twist had happened by then, and that's when I started to get really excited about it as a film. Markie is an incredibly interesting character, but once the shift back happened, I felt like we really had something special, because it was a story that I had never seen or really heard of before, and it really elevated to this really interesting place.
Right. So Markie, we say after years of isolation, really wants to reconnect externally with those institutions I was trying to kind of identify, a label, like obviously the church, but also family. And he's now got grandchildren coming into the picture, and he's really having a difficult time. So that those feelings sort of swept over her, and she decides to, and I know I can talk about this because the film starts with this, right? Where she's purging and deciding that she's going to re-identify, what was the term?
Detransition is a term people use, but
right, which is right. This happens, not surprisingly, but it's interesting because this is definitely like an intellectual, practical choice. It's like, I will be happier if I have these other things going on in my life, and maybe altogether they will compensate, for lack of another word, for this other area which I've decided to, intentionally repress. Doesn't work, but usually, okay, so that is where the real twist comes in. So, and indeed, he's welcomed with love back into the family and into, I'm not saying it was, I'm not trying to oversimplify.
Perfect, but
no, yeah. I'm sure it was not, but, and it seems like he's quite happy. So in a way, it does make you think, well, it more about this issue in a way that I haven't seen in a film before. We've seen lots of films on the subject of trans and transitioning, but we haven't really seen this. And there's a lot of.
I don't think the specifics of this story are unique to this, but I don't think people, the fact that transition is a linear process is not that uncommon. You do what you're able to, what you're safe to do, what you're comfortable with.
Right.
And there's, sacrifices that need to be made. I never, my intention wasn't to do a trans movie. And, when I was making this, people were like, oh, another trans movie. And I'm like, no, but it's, and I think just for audiences, anything beyond a linear story was too they just couldn't understand it. I don't know, America wasn't there yet. What do you mean you're this or that? And there's no being in between or doing it at your own pace or
right. And
doing
that's
the
another
steps
part
that
of it. It's like, yeah. Can you be, is there a way to accommodate more than just one identity?
and there is, it's just in Markie's specific circumstance, it's not super accommodating. If you live in a, you know, a more liberal city, you're in New York, San Francisco, you maybe, or, you know, any big city, you don't need to necessarily decide. You have a group of friends that are supportive, however you need to express yourself. It's just in the evangelical church. And the other thing is, Markie raised her kids to not be accommodating. Found a church that was not accommodating. So then when it was like, hey, this is what I'm doing, they got the idea that you can't do that from their father's
upbringing.
Who that was always so powerful to me to hear those early tapes. I mean, that was the other thing that really drew me to this project, I think, is all this archival material that Matt had sort of amassed of these family videos, these tapes of at the time Mark preaching this fire and brimstone sort of inflexible like opinion about how life is supposed to be, and then to have this happen Markie to Markie, and then to watch Markie struggle with it, and I just think that it
I found it. I struggled. The only time I didn't have true empathy for him, the only time I struggled a little bit, there were two instances. One was that I can recall. One was when and it both had to do with kids. One when he was lovely with his family when they were reunited, and his grandchildren very loving. But when he was, there was a moment in the street where he's talking to a young boy, and they are proselytizing, right? And he, is urging the kid to come back to the church or come to the church. I kind of just felt like this is a little kid. It just didn't feel appropriate to be ostracizing to somebody of a tender age. That's one thing. And then the other part was similar, where, he was talking to the kids in the church or the youth in the church who are, probably pretty much already, convinced, but he's telling them there's nothing for you out there. And I just felt like, that doesn't, it gets back to Zac, what you were just sort of saying. It's very narrow, no pun intended. It's sort of like, it's, part of this almost like a brainwashing.
And
it's culty talk. Culty talk.
And I don't want to give away anything, but like, we didn't want to end the film with that character. We once we were in the mix and kind of, Markie has gone through this cycle a lot of times in her life, and so, and we see it, I mean, testament to Markie to open her life up to Matt. I mean, it took an incredible amount of trust, and I'm really just thankful that she allowed that. Matt's in therapy sessions with at the time Mark, and the therapist is saying, well, this may come back again, like, I'm not sure you're gonna, and so it was like, and so I think we felt like there was still more story to happen, and so I think
clearly
at that point we were kind of locked in, and the last 2 years of waiting for the story to kind of catch up to where we thought it was going to go, and it took a lot of patience, and Matt has had an incredible amount of patience throughout this 10-year journey, and I think the finished film is a testament to both Markie's trust and Matt's patience, and I think they were able to pull off something very unique and special on that front.
Well, Matt transitioned out of being a filmmaker and back into being a filmmaker, and out of being a filmmaker several times during the course of the film, so he can really relate to Markie. I'm kidding about that. So it's going to have, again, the name of the film is Markie in Milwaukee. It's going to be available to anybody listening or watching Friday, November 20th, 2020 on the BAM's website. Just look for the link, and then there's a paywall, and you're supporting not only this special documentary, but you're also supporting BAM, because like a lot of art institutions, they need help. Everybody's help, actually. And by the way, I meant to say, you could have made a film about Markie just due to the gigantism alone, and how that must have been for a person to go through that. But obviously, in this day and age, not as big an issue. Then it might have been more difficult a couple of generations back, but still, already had that, and dealing with all what that brings, and then to have this whole other thing. I mean, my goodness. Now, Markie, other than giving away the ending, which we don't have to get into the details about that, but Markie alive and well?
Markie got COVID recently, but is recovering.
Okay.
So we're in touch. Markie's in my prayers. Keep Markie in your prayers, everybody. But I believe is on the up and up.
How old is he now? She
59, and her birthday is.
She's 59.
59, I believe.
Wow.
Birthday's February. Markie, I'm so sorry. Birthday's February 20th or 22nd. So on the way to 60.
Okay.
We're gonna have a big party.
Oh yeah, that's coming up. Happy birthday. All right. Also, and what did she? Where does she sit on in terms of the film and the final results of that? And you must have showed it to. Maybe you got to show it to her.
Yeah. No, and in throughout the various edits, I mean, even from the beginning, we would shoot little funny sequences for our Tumblr, and we'd watch and review, and then I was like, here's a cut, here's the first cut of the film, and I thought that was it, and then it was 3 years of here's the cut, and then we played at 10 festivals last year, and Markie came to most of them.
Right. Does she fly free? How does that work?
We'd take some artful negotiation with no, the TSA doesn't give you
No, it's a security operation. It's not.
She gets right through the line. She does get right through the line, though.
Right.
And then of course, the line was a little tricky because of how she was presenting, and then when they see you step in the thing, they press a button that says man or woman.
Oh.
And they
got to fix that. That's
well, and so we would go through the airport, and it's everyone she knew, and so they'd hit man, but then alas, there would be a garment that a man would not often be wearing, and it would just cause a little mix-up at the airport. But it's I think it was great to see people would come up and tell Markie, I grew up in an evangelical environment. I grew up in this hardline religious family. I know I went through something so similar. I've always been this, but I had to do this. So it was very touching. We played in Birmingham, and very liberal. At Sidewalk. A liberal. People at Film Fest are super liberal, but everyone's dad or grandpappy was a preacher, and everyone was like, "Well, I read the Bible same as you," but it was just very affirming, and that was kind of the highlight. But it's tough to see a movie about yourself.
Markie's a preacher, at heart, and I was at a handful of screenings, which the Q&As were always incredible. I mean, Markie just preaching to the people that had watched the film, and I was incredibly impressed.
What would he be preaching about? I know you mean he would have the same sort of technique as a preacher in those instances, in the sense that he has a way of really connecting with people in the audience, right? But what would he talk about?
Specifically, John 3:16.
Yeah, she likes that. Yeah, she does like that quote. But I mean, I think it was mostly about being yourself and accepting yourself, and having and taking something from Markie's story, you know, that Markie's into sharing her story, and likes the idea that if people can take lessons or positive things from that, that would happen. And I think that's why Markie has been so brave about sharing the story. And that's what always struck me about those sessions of Q&As, and just seeing the impact on the people who are really touched by the film. Because if you're a trans person who's grown up in a religious background, like, this film has been really special to a lot of people, and Markie has kind of held that space for a lot of people that she's met along the way.
I appreciate, you know, there's no scriptural when Markie comes up with what something is, it's like, is there scripture about it or is there not? There's nothing specifically anti-trans in the Bible. There's men shouldn't have long hair, or men shouldn't wear women's clothing, which they use, but it's a little wimpy. But there is tons of God loved everyone. We're all God's children. We're loved by God because he made us. And that was sort of more, which
really
is
something about long hair.
Yeah, men can't have there's like Samson and the Nazarenes.
Jesus always had a freak flag.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I know.
Well, I apologize to anyone who's trans or, or not trans. I think that might cover most of people, but about screwing up pronouns throughout the conversation. We're all sort of fortunately getting used to this. I mean, but more importantly, there's a conversation going on about it. And I like that the Markie in Milwaukee kind of really, really moves the dial in that way. It really, there's yet more nuance to this experience of what gender identification is all about,
There's a lot more. And I think it just took, trans people have always known this, but I think people that aren't and don't know trans people, it's, as you said, moving the dial. And that was, when I met Markie, it was like, oh, no one's ever seen this. And Markie can walk us through this world perfectly. Yeah. So it's 1 Corinthians. Does not nature teach you that if a man wears long hair is a disgrace to him? And that was the long hair one. They love Corinthians. They're in Corinthians all the time. So
who doesn't like a Corinthian?
A good Corinthian every.
Well, thanks, guys, and
great call.
Thanks, Zac, for putting this on my radar. And
super fun.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is great.
Pleasure, And last thing, just for personal information, how did Larry come on? It's a Glass Eye Pix production as well.
It's funny, Larry. We're three different filmmakers, all doing very different things. So it's a little unusual that this would be the film the three of us made. Morgan Whirlidge, our composer, has known Larry forever and shared the cut with him. And Larry just loves films, and it resonated with him. It's very different than his other films. I think I believe we're in the Glass Eye Pix has had their 35th anniversary.
Yeah.
And I think they made like a sizzle of all their films, and I think we're in it, which is just, it's very funny to be a different type of film. But he's a real lover of film, and it was just a blessing and an honor to have his support. And
he's why it got finished. He came on at a place that we really needed the support and the encouragement, and he took us over the finish line. Him and Morgan both were invaluable to actually getting the thing out there. And I'm so happy to have met them through this. They're both great filmmakers.
Yeah. Well, Larry's a friend and been on this show, on the podcast countless times, and he's always welcome on too. And he's even my neighbor up here now, which is
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
fun.
is nice. I'm pretty close to, not far from Woodstock, you know. So he has a place up here that he's been spending increasingly more time. No surprise up here.
Nice.
Sure.
All right, guys. Well, again, I'll help spread the word between now and Friday, or the next coming week, that it'll be available. Is it for 1 week theatrical? I suppose it'll be on the available.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and then
Very good. It's excellent.
a bunch of other theaters for, I don't know, the next few weeks.
Milwaukee, maybe in
It's going to be in Milwaukee, I believe.
Wisconsin, and
It will be at Lemley in LA, also virtual,
Mhm.
And a bunch of other great indie theaters. That our Instagram has a link of all of those. For
What's the Instagram? At Markie?
at Markie_in_Milwaukee.
All right.
I'll put that down in the like at the end and in the social media, etc.
Awesome.
I think I followed that today, in fact.
Cool. Oh yeah, I was very excited to see that.
Well, let's do it again next time around.
For sure. All right.
Keep in touch.
Thanks, Adam.
Good to see you both.
All right.
See you soon.
Take
Bye.
care.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
You too.